Hi everyone, it's Ajaratopa here. I believe everyone's in now, so we can get started. So good morning. Thank you for joining us today for a webinar on the introduction into the network access control. So NAC is all about the act of keeping unauthorized users and devices out of a private network. And today we're going to be joined by Portnox, who are a bit of a disruptive vendor in the networking security space that have a platform that brings together kind of all of the networking layers into simplistic single pane cloud management. So we're going to briefly recap on how NAC has become a vital area of focus for organizations. We're going to look at what NAC looks like today from a traditional on-premise sense, and then also looking at how it looks when it's cloud delivered as well. And what better way to do that than doing a demo of the Portnox platform. Before we get started, Tom, if you don't mind switching to the next slide. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat function, which is shown there, and we'll cover off all the Q&A at the end. And we just want to go over to the introduction. I'll give a little bit more about Tom, our host for today. So yeah, Thomas Sharma, a Vice President of Portnox Product Technology, has an incredible amount of experience, but is going to give you some great detail around the Portnox portfolio platform, and also looking at around network access control in general. And then also Scott Coombs, who is our in-house networking consultant. He's going to also support throughout, so we make it a bit more of a discussion. So I'm going to hand over to Thomas to take it from there, and we will catch up at the end for Q&A.
Awesome, thank you. Hello, everyone. As you mentioned, my name is Tomer Schemer. I'm the Vice President of Products here in Portnox, and I'm extremely happy to be with you here today to discuss the growing importance of network access control, obviously some recent trends, and what we at Portnox are bringing to solve this issue in a different paradigm, a different way. So there is no, a day goes by when you don't hear about additional data breaches and cyber attacks, and we're pretty much numb by it at this point. But what we are seeing just recently is that COVID pandemic actually made it worse, and it made it worse across all categories. And unfortunately, we don't see yet corporate IT professionals obtaining larger budget and resources in order to deal with those increased cyber attacks around the enterprise organizations. But fortunately, I also believe that this could serve as a catalyst to look at the network access business needs and try to combat those associated network security challenges, especially now during the pandemic, where heavy set of our employees are being remote, having to work remotely. So getting into a bit of our about how our corporate network evolve over time. So as you can see here on the chart, tens of years ago, we started with PCs or terminals, and then we moved to the tablets and mobile phones, and later on, almost every device within the organization is able to connect to our corporate network. We call it IoT, but it kind of stands for everything almost. And this is not just a matter of the types of devices, obviously it's the amount of devices that are surfacing on our networks. Having said that, also the access surface has evolved. We started with wired connections to our walls, and then we had some conference rooms with guest Wi-Fi maybe, but then large organizations started to obtain Wi-Fi technology throughout, also for the employees and for more essential, important company resources. And pretty recently, we're also seeing some software-defined type of networks, cloud resources that should be consumed by the employees and so on. Having said all of that, makes the organization completely distributed, completely decentralized, especially now with the pandemic and the need to work from home. And that brings a new set of challenges. First, how do I get enough visibility of every device that is connected to our network? especially in the BYOD type of area when almost every employee has his own couple of devices to connect as well. Once I know all of those devices that are connected to my network, how can I profile them and understand exactly what they are and what type of authentication should I apply on them? And once they are authenticated, how can I authorize them or segment them in our network into appropriate place? And again, in cyber attack, it's not a matter of if I'm going to get attacked. It's mainly a matter of when. And if that's the game that we're playing, then the breach containment and the segmentation piece becomes extremely critical. And last is, those enormous amount of devices. What's their risk? What's their compliance? How do I remediate them when they're on and also off the network? Lastly, I place it here on the right-hand side because I think that's probably one of the most important trend that we are seeing in the last year, maybe year and a half, is called SASE, and that's Secure Access, Secure Edge. And when we talk about SASE, we're talking about first a Gartner term from, I believe, last August, where they look at the traditional network security architecture today, and we see that most of the security services are residing on the headquarter, on the data centers, and those remote workforce, remote offices, branches are all consuming those security services, the security stack from that headquarter, from the center. In the good case, you need to scale those security services to your branches. In a less, I wouldn't even call it good or bad, but in a less complicated case, but still more expensive, you need to be able to connect all of those distributed employees and branches to the center, and then obtain those security services. The SASE diagram, the SASE type of architecture, is talking about something completely different. So each of those remote branches, remote employees, and even the headquarter itself will obtain the security stack from the cloud, directly from the cloud. And this sits pretty much well with almost every other technology you're seeing out there. Security technologies like firewalls, which are now based on clouds with firewall as a service, but you're also seeing this with more fundamental resources like your directories. And those repositories are now shifting from AD, for example, to the cloud as well, when we talk about Azure AD, Okta, G Suite, and so on. So that's the kind of the paradigm shift that we are seeing today when for customers using and obtaining security services. But how will the role of network access control fit all of this today? So it allows us, just the name of SASE, it allows us to shift the focus a bit and talk about network access control, about NAC, which is one of the most important elements that we have on the network security today. There are many use cases for NAC, but today, thanks for the surge of remote workforce, some of the more important use case to include, I would say, is obviously the device visibility, and again, across all access layers, being able to segment and authorize your devices to specific segments within the network, the compliance, and even the ability to remediate issues and risks on your devices on and off prem, guest type of access control, and so on.
And just to kind of add to what you're saying there, Thomas, I would say that NAC is key to unchaining the users and allowing them to have that mobility, giving them the freedom to collaborate wherever they want to, whenever they want to, but still having that security that follows them around and getting the right security wherever they're accessing the network from whatever device they're accessing the network.
100% agree, and this is, of course, intensified in the latest period that we're facing worldwide. And the state of the network access control today, you've seen this a bit on the SASE slide, is to sit heavily on-prem and providing those capabilities on-prem. So, I mean, you can talk, and I'm sure you're already familiar with some of the traditional NAC deployments that are out there. Um, and usually, people are looking at it as a bit of like the four-letter word. It's completely frustrating. The deployments are very cumbersome and take sometimes months and months, and even then, not getting fully completed. The on-site hardware that is required in many cases requires a lot of maintenance, larger IT teams. In many cases, difference in scalability and changes in your business needs also requires different of modules, on-prem modules and hardware, which sometimes even get end of life. And all of those traditional pain points, I would say, are now we're getting away from them using the new paradigm, the new SASE paradigm of taking those security services and try to obtain them all the way from the cloud. I would say one thing, that even those traditional on-prem NAC solutions started to bring out their some cloud components, but in many cases, because the fundamental infrastructure of the NAC solution still reside on-prem, the main offering that they can provide is cloud management. And there is a huge difference between just managing from the cloud and actually obtaining and enforcing your policies and visibility from the cloud.
I would think it's fair to say that NAC is an absolutely essential ingredient for the modern, secure, flexible, IoT-ready network. But it isn't a light undertaking, especially when you're putting it on-prem. So I know Tom is going to now explain the alternative to that.
Exactly. And so the future obviously is cloud delivered, and you can see this in almost any area of enterprise technology, including the identity repositories and so on. And the future of NAC is also reside on the cloud. I don't need to go over all of these benefits of the transitioning to the cloud. I'm sure you're all aware of them. For NAC, however, it's just important to stress that these points about moving to the cloud delivered solution is mainly about fast deployment. I would even say in many organizations, feasible deployments. We're seeing customers with traditional on-prem NAC just don't get a full coverage of their network. They either leave some of their branches and remote workforce exposed, or just pay a hell of a lot more to get all of their organization covered by an on-prem solution. And the second probably important piece of being fully cloud delivered is the total cost of ownership. I mean, there are no hidden costs here or expensive customization and scalability issues along the way. You're paying for exactly what you're using. And that gives me a great opportunity to take a quick look at our platform here at Portnox. We call it Portnox Clear. And it's the first and only cloud delivered NAC solution. And by cloud delivered, I do not mean cloud managed. I mean that we are truly have no on-prem components whatsoever. And that means extremely fast deployments. It's literally a matter of minutes. Clear also offers standard subscription pricing. It can scale up and down just like any other cloud type solution based on your business needs. And it offers device visibility control across all access layers. And that includes Wi-Fi, wired, and VPN. And this covers both managed devices and BYOD on and off-prem. And that's why the off-prem now, and I'm stressing that specifically because of the recent COVID pandemic, is because being cloud is the only way for you to be able to assess the compliance and remediate issues on your devices when they're off-prem, when they're not connected to your network. Do you want to see it? Let's go and see the platform live. So I'm logging in now into Clear. Let me choose one of our organization. We also have an MSP type of portal that allows us to manage subordinaries organization. Let me go into one. Click connect. And now I'm connecting to one of our tenants in the cloud. The first screen that you can see here is just extreme amount of visibility and statistics and KPIs on our dashboard in regards to how many devices are connecting to the network, in what authentication request types over time. You can also observe, for example, the number of devices connected to the network over time and the and the network equipment utilization, for example, and so on. All of this is available just for statistics reasons, but the actual details are all residing under this screen. We call it device view, and the main idea here is that you get full visibility of everything that resides on the network. Every device that's connected, you're able to search for it and obtain the information about its access, risk, and monitoring. Let me look, for example, on one of our employees. So within a simple click, a simple search, I'm able to obtain details on a specific PC here on my organization. This one belongs to a guy named Vova. I can obtain some of the security products on his computer, his application, his critical softwares, and so on. But the most interesting piece when it comes to network access control is how our connection to our network and its behavior over time looks like. And here you can see that we are monitoring his access to the network. We're monitoring his compliance and his risk posture assessment along this timeline, and with the ability to have full visibility of what this device had done. We can also see obviously the location and if there is a risk, why the risk exists. In this case, it's a presence of non-expiring passwords for some accounts on that device. This visibility also gives you full amount of full granularity levels in terms of filtering, in terms of looking on locations, looking at device types, operating systems, and so on. One of the pieces that we emphasized along this presentation is the ease of deployment. On-prem traditional NAC solutions requires you to allocate aside some servers, some appliances, and then the need to sometimes even hire consultants in order to install, configure, and then maintain those services. Here at Clear, it's all a matter of a checkbox. So for example, to obtain your Radius server in the cloud, it's all a matter of deciding in which location, in which cloud data center is closest to you. It can either be United States, Europe, or Asia, and obtain that specific tenant for your organization with the relevant IP address, accounting ports, authentication ports that are later configured on your network gear. Same goes with fast deployment and integration with your directory repositories. It's all a matter of enabling and disabling the integration with your G Suite directory. If you have on-prem AD, that's an optional component as well. Azure AD integration, and so on. Let's go to see the policies before we jump to some questions from the audience, because that's probably one of the most important pieces. What type of granularity can I allow my my employees, my devices on the network in terms of policy enforcement? So here at Clear, we have three types of policies. You can have access control policy, which basically says, what am I doing in terms of successful authentication in case of violation of authentication, risk violation, and so on. Would I deny the access or just send the device to a quarantine? And I can do that in different access layer. Risk assessment policies. What's important for me to assess on the device at all time? This is a continuous risk assessment that happens between the device and the cloud. And here you can see a set of values when you can basically decide the risk score of each, and then by playing with your scale, obtain a policy when a specific risk is allowed, when it's just alert, and when those devices should be blocked from the network. You can see here, for example, disk encryption, my need to make sure the device is part of the domain, in which type of domain, that the antivirus is fully updated, maybe no missing patches, and so on. The last piece is the remediation piece, and that's our capability, our ability to proactively remediate issues when they occur and not just at the time of the connection to the network. This piece is extremely important, especially now when employees are working off-prem, because when there is an issue, you want to be able to control the issue. For example, if someone did enter a USB stick of a storage to his managed device, and from an organization policy perspective, that's forbidden, you can simply and proactively disconnect his USB peripheral device once it's connected, and so on. From my short presentation, I'm assuming you all are more than welcome to request a deeper dive and a deeper demo. But just to summarize what we have covered here today and jump to our Q&A session, we talked about the importance of obtaining device visibility and profiling across all access layers, especially today, mapping the right authentication methods, and then authorizations, segmentation, network segmentation of those devices, continuously measuring and assessing the compliance and risk scores of each of our devices that connect to the network, and then adding the capability to proactively remediate them. So this is me for today and the introduction for network access control. I'm moving it on to you.
Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. It was a very, very nice demonstration, and I hope that's given everyone a quick overview. A couple of questions that came through, so I'll just sort of pick off one to begin with. In terms of Portnox working with other providers from a networking standpoint, can you give a little bit of an overview of that, Thomas, and what that looks like? Is it seamless? Is there areas that it doesn't integrate well with? If you don't mind, just giving a summary on that side.
Of course. So it's all a matter of what type of integration are we looking at. In NAC type of solutions, we usually have two types. When NAC enriches other systems like SIM and so on, and when NAC obtains some risks and events from third-party detection systems and enforces the actual operation on them, like disconnect from the network. We have lots of built-in integrations like Palo Alto and Cisco and others, including different repositories, and they're all out of the box. Our APIs are extremely extensive and are part of the platform. You're more than welcome to look at them. I guess that kind of addresses your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it kind of brings us nice onto the next one around, network access control. Granted, it's very important for all industries, but is there a particular industry that you would say it's very useful to have or very important to have this level of control?
In today's world, I would say everyone. Even the smallest organization that I know of are still having guests over, are still having their employees bringing their BYOD over. If you don't have the right visibility, authentication, and segmentation on your network, you're basically exposing your internal assets to the weakest link of this access chain. If you talk about cloud type of solution, then obviously there are more enterprise organizations that find this more beneficial. For example, distributed organizations. We have a large rental car company, and because they're heavily distributed, the fact that it's 100% cloud native and there are 0 on-prem components was a major factor for them. Organizations with smaller IT, our networking team. Organizations that already shifted or moved their on-prem directories to the cloud will find a NAC solution, which is very, very integrated with directories for authentication, a much better suit.
Okay, all right, thank you, Thomas. And another question here around VPN providers. Do you need to change your VPN provider if you want it to work with Clear and have a remote workforce?
That's actually one of the biggest value we bring today for Zero Trust Remote Access, because once you install our agent with the continuous risk monitoring, you're not just getting visibility and access control, you're also getting this additional compliance and risk posture and remediation on top of the VPN. We are actually validating that VPN is occurring and obtaining all the relevant information as part of the security access decision.
Brilliant. Thank you, Thomas. That's all from the question side. If anyone has any more, feel free to send across. Whilst we wait, Thomas, if you don't mind switching to the next slide, I can give a quick intro into what's coming up. So next on our webinar, so we've actually gone to one webinar a month, and our next webinar is on Bechtle. It's an incredible piece of CCTV software that gives you an incredible amount of information and data to review from what works really well when you have a very dispersed business or multiple different offices to manage. You'll also notice there we've got the icon business. Going forward, you'll see 2 tracks, essentially, a business track where it's a lot more around business benefits, business challenges, and how there's certain solutions that are solving that. And we'll also, similar to today, we'll have technical tracks as well that go into a lot more demonstrations and product-led discussions as well. We will stay, we are early, finishing early by the looks of it, so we'll stay on the line for a couple more minutes. If there's any more questions, feel free to share them. But if not, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you, Thomas and Scott, for presenting today.
Sure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so. My pleasure.